Welcome once again to Quiet Please, the Golf Podcast. I am Alan Depew, and you have found our little panel of experts as we discuss the future of golf, some changes to the tour, the golf ball, a special and a couple of special announcements. And if you're listening to us on one of the podcasts, please give us a like, a little 5-star rating. We'd greatly appreciate that. If you're watching our YouTube channel, uh, ask us some questions. We always like feedback from everybody. Subscribe. As always, joining the panel, esteemed golf professional, now hailing from Kentucky, and a beautiful new office, by the way, Boston Bob Baldessari. How are you, Bobby?
Welcome, and I'm feeling wicked organized at this point with a desk in an
It's a,
office.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
To my right, bottom right there, the ever-present one, Mr. Andy Hydorn.
Ever present, missing last week, but I'm ever present right now.
You are. You are indeed.
Old guys rule today, by the way.
And we call him BE. You call him golf columnist, instructor extraordinaire. Dude's got some really cool stuff coming. I saw logos. Brendan,
Good evening.
good evening. Hey, so as I mentioned, PGA, look, here's some things we're going to talk about. PGA Tour policies, new rules on the size of the fields. The USGA's continued push. I know I'm glad Andy's here. The continued push for the golf ball rollback for tournaments. We may work in the PGA of America. I don't know if we have enough time. We've already touched on the whole Ryder Cup thing. Tiger Woods makes an announcement, but I want to go to actually. I'm gonna throw you right into the hot seat right now, B. I want to go to the announcement that was made by the LPGA today. I don't know if you've even seen it.
Was it about Molly?
The LPGA, I'm going to read this actually so everybody, I don't mess this up. The LPGA has updated its gender policy for competition eligibility effective starting with the 25 season. The policy, informed by a working group of top experts, medicine, science, sports psychology, golf performance, and gender policy law, was developed with input with a broad array of stakeholders, prioritizing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I am just going to paraphrase this because it's long. Accordingly, under the rules, long story short is the LPGA has adopted a policy whereas if you are born and identify as a female, that is your eligibility because to play on the LPGA Tour, a topic we actually talked about I think 3-4 weeks ago.
I did not know that, but I mean, as we talked about, it really has less to do with how you feel about the topic in general and more to do about what's equitable and fair for women's golf. So again, as I stressed, because it's a sensitive subject, as I stressed last time we talked about it, I have zero issues with folks that want to explore that and that's what they feel is the right thing for their life. That's their prerogative. I'm all for that. But in terms of athletics, and specifically golf, I mean, there is definitely differences between male and female golfers. And if you were born male, and I mentioned this last time, I'm not a doctor. I don't know the whole science behind it, the biology behind it. But you've got to think there's an unfair advantage, particularly in the case of the person that was trying to, can't remember the name, that was trying to qualify.
Well, they specifically in depth to go to the science of the question. They specifically go to pre-puberty or post. Excuse me, post-puberty as a male, and the fact that how that impacts it. But Bobby, they actually took a different interesting twist, and I'll go to this part of their press release. They also noted golf offers opportunities for athletes to compete at all professional, elite, amateur levels. Individual competitions are generally categorized as women's events, which have specific eligibilities, or open events, where any player, regardless of sex, is eligible to compete. So in theory, their position, my layman's way of reading this is if you're identify as transgender, you have the opportunity to tee it up in an open category.
Yes, you could, which is a really good point. I applaud the LPGA, frankly, on what they did to, I guess, protect or just keep the LPGA as it is. And I think it's a good move. Like Brendan said, hey, in your own life, in your own walks, or whatever, non-athletic, um, that's a different story. But you're talking athletics, there's enough science there to prove that any kind of change later in life it's just not an equitable playing field. And yeah, it's a great point. Open tournaments, open championships, open anything. There you go. Have at it.
Andy, I don't think you were on that particular show when you were once not present, very, very few times, but the three of us were discussing that, and the LPGA commissioner went on to say the policy represents a continued commitment to ensuring that all feel welcome within our organization while preserving the fairness and competitive equity of our elite competitions. Opportunity to chime in. Which thoughts? I'll just chime in. I applaud the LPGA. I said it before, even when we talked about this a few weeks ago. The time was coming that they were going to have to make a stand on how they felt they needed to address the issue, and obviously
Yeah,
they did.
I applaud them as well. It's difficult in this day and age to take a stance as such, just because there's so much backlash potential for taking that type of stance. But I got on a social media discussion, if you will, about this last week, and it's a rabbit hole. It's a never-ending rabbit hole, and the people who are for kind of no rules for transgendered athletes just continue to throw up you know somewhat scientific arguments that I don't know enough about to refute, but in general, the sense of drawing a line is the most simple way at where the LPGA drew the line. And it kind of reminds me of in this never-ending thirst for equality, the whole Oscar Pistorius thing. Um, separate the fact that he shot his girlfriend through the bathroom wall. We won't get into that part, but like having guys with prosthetics that have springs race against people who are racing with their God-given legs. I understand the desire to create that equality for those marginalized people, but at some point there is an advantage there, and I just think it's the unpopular, or let me rephrase that, it's the popular opinion, but the risky stance to take, and I applaud them for doing that.
I do as well, and I just one last point is you referenced a young lady from, I'm gonna say, Sweden or Norway a few weeks back.
Helen Bream from Germany.
Germany. So with the numbers she was putting up statistically, and can you imagine that's the elite female athlete today? And again, I'm not taking a side. It's a very sensitive topic, and but if she is as elite as she could potentially be in game changing with those kind of numbers, with ball speed and club head speed, and now she would be competing against a player who has gone through is post puberty and still has male testosterone. In the interest of fairness alone, that's where I am, and I get it. Social media was a buzz. For every applaud, there was somebody yelling about being discrimination. So,
Yeah, but
what are you gonna do?
if you look at Babe Diedrichson, right, who is arguably one of the best female athletes of all time, I think if you would take some tests, or have the ability to take some tests of what was going on in her body, and I'm just saying this based on her appearance, she looked like she had some testosterone running through her body. I mean, she had more of a manly look to her. She was physically stronger than the others. And I think that naturally occurs in the world. And that's a place where some people try to take that stance is that there's a disadvantage for some people anyway. So it just, I mean, there are going to be people like this Helen Bream from Germany who's built like Michael Phelps, right?
Right.
If you see her, her torso is like 4 feet long, and she has physical advantages, and but that's just
Well,
it's sports. Sports
so
is
is
not
mine, but it's more landscape.
yeah. Sports is not a right, you know. I mean, it's not a right like voting is a right, or like, being able to ride on a bus is a right. It's a different thing. So I applaud again the LPGA for
So
taking this.
so Andy, since and I didn't know about uh her, that woman you were mentioning. We had the boxer in the Olympics that was also
Yeah.
a case where she was a woman, but through a medical condition. So you're going to have those cases, and
Yep.
I think they're few and far between, but you're still going to have those cases. And it sounds, and I didn't read it fully what AD was talking with the press release, but that's all we need. Like we need clear definitions, a line in the sand, if you will, of what it is, and that takes away all this talking from this side and this side on the topic. It takes it and puts it to bed.
I'm reminded of the line in the movie Moneyball, just along that lines where Billy Bean's character Brad Pitt goes, "They're athletes. They just want to know where they stand."
Right.
Yeah.
And where do we stand? Transition. Where do we stand with Tiger? BE. I did not catch the presser, so
So I listened to the whole thing, and
he's your man.
there was a lot of stuff that he touched on. The first thing was his health, which is an ongoing saga, but he had another procedure done. I don't know if that slid under the radar for me, another back procedure, which was the big issue, according to him, from this past year. And he said he was miserable at the Open, which you could kind of tell. Um, and so he's feeling stronger, but he's not tournament sharp. And he goes, he's not going to pull that trigger basically again and do it prematurely, which he's done in the past a couple times. But he still has the desire to compete. And then somebody brought up what he said last year. I think it was last year at this time at the Hero, about him playing once a month. He goes, I don't know. I'm not going to give you any timetables. I don't know when I'm going to tee it up again soon, but the goal is to tee it up again soon. Um, so that was what he talked about. They asked him about topics we're going to talk about a little bit later about Ryder Cup money, and had a great stance on that, which I kind of agree with. So should I save that till later?
No, because I don't know if we're going to get to the Ryder Cup. We got too many other things going on.
So they asked him, should the players be compensated? And he goes, it's not about more money. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. It's not about more money for them as players, because this isn't the first time that this has come up. Um, he was talking about all the players would donate it to the charity of their choice. And isn't that one of the purposes of the PGA of America or another, to give back to the game? And from that standpoint, I was like, yeah, I absolutely see that as being a viable way of compensating these guys, but doing it for the right reasons.
Bobby, PGA member, what's your thoughts?
Give me some of that money, I can grow the game. Give some of that money to Brendan Elliott. Give that some of the money to 29,000 others. Maybe not 29,000 because you get some in admin roles, but
It's 31,000.
yeah, hey,
38.
Moves. It's
it's
moving number.
yeah. Uh, Yeah, geez, it drives me crazy when all that money gets thrown to corporate this and that, and the players would get some money. I mean, Rory, I just think had the best line ever. He goes for, was it 50 for 2 years, so 104 weeks, so 103 weeks you're playing really, find some money to play for 1 week, or you throw in the Olympics now, you play for that higher calling in your country, and there's something powerful about that. It's why the Ryder Cup started. Could you keep that spirit going? Like anything in recent generations, business, the thing starts going off the rails. It's now so much off the rails. I think it's ridiculous. If the PGA America is just going to keep making more money and finding ways to keep that money and not help Brennan and I, um, to really affect change in this country for people that can play golf, maybe people that would want to play more golf. That's frustrating to me as a PGA member.
Andy, from a Tiger playing perspective, is he done? Is he Michael Jordan on the Wizards at this point?
I don't know. I'm tired of
Tiger Woods 4.0, 5.0?
I am. And look, the more time you take off because of this and that, and then there's talk of a comeback and this, it's falling on deaf ears for me anyway. I think he's been done for a while. But he doesn't want to admit that he's done. It was funny, I heard Rocco on his show the other day was talking about, Tiger's turning 50, and, you know, Rocco was pondering whether he might play 20 some events on the Champions Tour. And I'm like, there ain't no way in hell
No.
that he plays anything beyond a major. And probably won't even play all the majors. It's just, I mean, he's a sideshow at this point to me.
100%. He is hitting wedges in his backyard. He is laying on his boat, and he's following Charlie around. And oh
Which,
yeah, I'll play
so
play a little golf here and there.
did that come up, BE, about the what is it, the PNC event?
Uh, he's not in the field now. He didn't talk about it. So, um, I mean, he talked about Live too. We could talk about that.
I don't want to talk about Liv.
I did hear from a golf industry person
I
this
don't want to
week
talk about Liv.
that said to me, that hire was going to be a good one. That this person was aware of this person's talents and what they've done, and they happen to think that was a solid managerial executive hire for that kind of business. So,
Oh shit.
What,
Go ahead,
to
Bobby.
take over Greg
Now we
Norman?
got to talk about Liv.
To take
well, I
over
want
Greg Norman's spot, Bobby?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
CEO over. I figured I would get a response from Andy.
No, I mean, it's just to be clear, we're talking about the hire of
Yeah,
the person to take over Greg Norman's spot.
right.
Yeah, I don't.
Like an actual person that knows that role versus whatever Norman.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know more about who they're hiring. Maybe as a connector instead of a divider, possibly. I was hitting balls next to another Australian major champion the other day.
Of
And we were
course you were, Andy.
we were talking about Greg and Liv. And I had asked Elkington if he had talked to Greg at all, and he said not really. He was texting a little bit with him on Thanksgiving, and but he was intimating that like Greg's going to be totally out um, of the whole Liv thing. So who knows?
So how does that play into the other announcement or other topic? Moving segues here, the PGA Tour announcing that starting in 26, they're reducing the number of players eligible for weekly tournaments, allowing fringe players to create greater new opportunities for those to break through. My first question is, Andy, we'll come right back to you. Who are these fringe players, and what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think they've lost their way a little bit when it comes to appeasing the top of the funnel here. And I get the impression that there's a lot of unsettled players there that aren't at the top of the funnel who are um, not happy with the way this whole thing has evolved. It's becoming more of a closed thing. And closed is okay, is the impression I'm getting, but without the ability to crack through is really what the complaint is. And I think I've said this before. I don't like the limited field events. I just it's if that's what it's come to, in the dust is all these other guys who are not really getting a chance. To me, that's not something that I'm a fan of.
So, Bobby, I'm gonna spin it back to you, our resident historian. So, in the days of the rabbits chasing things around, will this reduce opportunities for players trying to secure their place on the tour? Will it leave it even more competitive pressure for these guys on the fringe?
I absolutely think it's going to. You're going to lose. You're not going to have all those Cinderella stories. You're not going to have the guys that can sort of break through. All that I think is really going to be a big consequence. To me, it's like the PGA Tour is going back to the NHL original six. They're going back to the NBA and the ABA. They're going back to the NFL. Like they're rolling this thing back. I agree with Andy. I think they've lost their way. I don't know what's going on there. I saw a very interesting stat just yesterday. I think the revenue brought in by all the big leagues and what the commissioners paid. It's astounding. Which did you see that? Oh my God!
I know what roughly the number is, what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like the tour brings in 1 point something billion, but Jay's going to get 23 million. The other commissioners are like 10 million. I mean, but it's based on that. You look at that revenue scale, and the NFL brings in a crazy amount of revenue. And yeah, I think Roger Goodell is what at 40, 50, 60 million, but it's all, if you look at
Oh,
something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
based on revenue percentage, but like Monahan is way, way off the charts, crazy off the charts for the amount of he makes versus what the revenue brings in. But then you look at what's happened in the last year or two, and by all accounts, if you look at the grading, he's not graded well whatsoever, yet he's making these massive bonuses.
Right.
Something, I mean, look at some big, big, big iconic corporate sponsors dropping. Viewership is down. All these things are going on. He hasn't handled a lot of things well. He's making 23 million. It's like, wow, most people in that role get fired.
Yeah. They do. So, BE, as a teacher of youngsters, people aspiring, what does this mean for the up and coming golfer and players? Is it a total shakeup of the pathway? Corn Ferry, Q School events, smaller events. What's this all mean for emerging players?
There's so many moving parts to what's happening here. And Tiger touched on it in his presser, but of course he's on that upper echelon and he's making it sound like it was a good move for the tour. But at the same time, he was proud of uh, the Genesis making that a full field. So I'm like, he's talking out both sides of his mouth. He talked about the importance of that particular event that he's the host of being a full field. So I saw him going in both directions. Look, I feel really bad. I really been following this fall series of the FedEx Cup and look, I get the corporate piece. There's very few people interested in Wesley Bryan keeping his card or any of these other guys or the gentleman from Puerto Rico winning. I mean, to me, those are great stories, and we're going to lose all that. That just so like depressing. And to your point, AD, these guys that are chasing the dream and hoping to Monday qualify or break through or um, those are good stories. But are those the stories that are going to get corporate sponsors to come in? Probably not. So I don't know. I'm hoping that Tiger and Rory's deal will kind of change things up because I think golf needs a major shakeup. Um, and you're seeing that like this past couple of weeks on YouTube golf. I'm watching way more YouTube golf than I'm watching professional golf because it's drawing me back into the excitement I had when I was a
Well,
kid. I
it's
love the
fan
game, the
engagement, right?
personalities. Yeah, totally. I mean, Wesley and George and Grant Horvat and Rick Shields and a couple other guys played for $100,000 skins game. That was a fascinating 2.5 hours to watch. Just fascinating. And there's other stuff. John Rahm was on Bob Does Sports doing a 9-hole taco challenge, which was seeing John Rahm put down 18 tacos in 9 holes. It was
Well,
entertaining.
and most importantly, Bryson finally jarred it over top.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Andy, that I got to ask the inevitable. Why? Why is the PGA Tour doing this? Do they want a more exclusive brand and make it harder for entries? Is the stories of the Will Zalatorises of the world gone?
I honestly think that this was an overreaction to Jay Monahan's criticism, um, how he handled Live and what the dynamics were with Live and the PGA Tour. And I think we all knew that at the time that the PGA Tour was trying to make changes, they really couldn't afford to be doing what they were doing, right? So I think we're at the point now where the horse is out of the barn and there's not a lot you can do right now, and it just seems like it's a situation that's going to have to ultimately hopefully correct itself when they eventually merge with Live, or make a deal with Live, I should say. And I hope I hope they figure out how to kind of right the ship a little bit. I really do.
So,
AD,
yes, sir.
yeah, if you look at that tournament board, that Tiger board, that board that's making all the decisions, that's that top of the top. It would be fascinating if they could rotate in one or two PJ Tour members that just made it on tour to
Yeah.
get their perspective at the bottom. Because right now, that very, very tippity top of the funnel is driving everything.
Well, who's the guy? Malnati, right?
Right. Yep.
Like he's that guy because he was on the, or at least maybe he was on the policy board or whatever.
Right.
But he's that guy that treads on that line. But I think you're right, Bobby. It's clear that that group needs to be represented as well. Scotty Scheffler was interviewed, I think it was today, and he said the most amazing thing, when it comes to this. He goes, "We're all overpaid anyway." And you know what? Like F Phil Mickelson for starting this whole, just narrative of those guys not making enough money because it's ridiculous. I said this before. Pat Perez made $30 million on the PGA Tour before he left for Live, right? So and this was before the explosion of money and all that other stuff. So let's not have this false, kind of narrative about how there was no money out there for these guys. That's just a joke.
Can I add something real quick, AD, before we transition?
Sure.
So Scotty made what 28 million or something on tour this season.
And by the way, Scotty always says the right thing, but go ahead.
He does, and I love that about him because those upper echelon guys, and again, he had a wicked season, as Bobby would put it, with 7 wins, $28 million. They're making their cut on corporate stuff. So, I mean, purses doesn't have to get out of control like it is. But the thing that jarred me was I've been paying a lot of attention to the ladies, and we had a record-breaking season on the LPGA Tour with $6.8 million being the new standard 6.8. Scotty was 28 million. There is definitely an issue out there. And I
And
don't
Nelly won 6.8.
know. It was
Yeah.
Total purse.
yeah,
The young lady that won the
won the tour championship. Yeah.
yeah, Nelly was like 4, almost 5.
It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, again, from a corporate side, yes, it makes sense to me.
Well, all right. Oh God, I'm gonna get hit with this one. It does and doesn't. I mean, look, we all understand it. It's the number of eyeballs on
Correct.
the product. You know, if you have if you have a WNBA team that's only putting 1,000 people in the seats versus 24,000 watching the Lakers and LeBron, you can only spend so much amount of money.
And I've said this before. I don't give two shits what these people make. It matters to me none. Like when they increase the purses, I don't care.
Yeah.
I have no interest in one way or the other. I don't care. I don't care how much the ladies make. That's for them to bitch about. That's for the men to bitch about. As a golf fan, I only care about who wins the tournaments, right?
You
The
know what I
money,
care about, Andy Hydorn? Events and venues.
events and venues. It's coming back to roost again. But seriously, I don't care about the money thing is so inconsequential to the fan. It's not a thing.
Storylines. You got to put events, venues, and storylines in there too.
Yeah.
Correct. I would agree with that. So, storyline is the USGA rollback of the golf ball. It's back. And here's a funny for everybody out there. So, this week I typed into GPT. I'm a rookie at this, Bobby. Okay. I said USGA rollback. And it comes back to me, says, and I'm going to quote exactly off my show note here. The USGA is pushing for the reduction of the distance of ball can travel in professional tournaments. This has been controversial with widespread opposition. Swear to God, including from Andy Hydorn, a well-known critic.
Wow.
So, Andy Hydorn, in our presence, well-known critic.
Yeah. A very well-known critic. Again, I've made my case on this. Just do it. Just do it. Nobody will care, a year from now. Just do it. It's for the betterment of the game. Because again, this was my point before. It's going to be my point now. It'll be my point a year from now. Distance is a relativity issue. It's not a number issue. The guy who used to hit a 270, was the monster, right? He was the guy that hit it further than all the other guys who are hitting at 245. So it's a relativity thing. It'll always be a relativity thing. Doesn't matter.
Andy, I got to ask you, I hadn't thought of this before, but for the listeners, viewers, in a different time and place, Andy was with this one particular golf company that was starting with a pretty innovative guy, Mr. Callaway. What do you think he would think of a lot of this?
Well, I know he tried to introduce a driver that was, above the COR limit to help people enjoy the game a little bit more. And it's kind of along the same lines of what they're talking about, the bifurcation of the ball rules, right? So he was trying to do that and got literally crucified for well, not literally, but he got figuratively crucified for doing this. And so did Arnold Palmer, by the way.
Yep.
Right.
So did Karsten with the square grooves. I mean,
Yep. So, again, it's a silly topic that's being made into something that's much larger.
So is it just the Blue Blazers that are only about an hour away from me here in New Jersey that are trying to protect some traditional golf course design and combat the distance players are hitting the ball?
Why not? Why not? Why shouldn't they be protecting that? I mean, having 520-yard par fours is ridiculous.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. So, you know, back in the early 80s, if a par four was 440 yards, it was a bear.
It was a
It was
monster.
it was a monster, right? And now we're talking 80 yards longer. I mean,
Did you
it's
did you
silly.
happen to see over Thanksgiving? I think it was on the Golf Channel. They were playing reruns of the Skins game back with Arnie, Jack, um, who was their Fuzzy,
Gary
Derek.
playing. Yeah.
Was he playing? Yeah, it was just funny, see them with Persimmon Woods and talking about the yards relative to what was there. I think I would love to see a golf event. You got to put every tour player in really heavy, kind of wet FootJoys with spikes. You got to wear Tafini slacks. You got to wear like these polyester shirts,
Pickering shirts.
Pickering shirts. Yeah, hard collar,
Yeah.
pocket.
I think they call that the Hickory Tour.
Yeah.
Well,
I
yeah,
was just gonna say there is such a thing.
yeah.
And those guys usually play at some pretty good venues with hickory shafts, and guess what? They shoot even par.
Yeah.
Andy, as a vocal authority, apparently, because you've
Vocal.
vocal, will we see a shift in players' use of equipment strategies? Will that impact what equipment they're using, golf balls, clubs, what have you?
I don't see. I mean, if the spin dynamics of the ball change, which I think it will, then yeah, you'll see people adjust. I think for sure.
Care to elaborate?
Would you like me to say the exact same thing again? No, I honestly feel like you know, as things have evolved to a ball that doesn't spin as much, the equipment's evolved, and that's a big part of the distance thing too. And the spinning golf ball or the spin of a golf ball is part and parcel to the ability to roll back the distance. And
But B,
they'll adjust.
you just mentioned fan engagement. B, will the rollback make the game less appealing to new fans?
There's going to be a learning curve here for everybody on what the new norm will become, but it won't take long. Like Andy was alluding to, it won't take long for what the norm will be for people to accept it. I don't think, right?
I don't know. I mean, have they become so accustomed to watching Bryson hit it a quarter of a mile?
Do you really think that people are so attached to the numbers? Like
I I
when you
think
watch a long drive competition and they're hitting at 400, like does that really matter to you? Like what the numbers are
no, 'cause
if
I
someone wins
personally don't give a
400?
shit. But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is, the oh God, I wish we had Christian. The bro crowd standing there drinking their White Claws, and they know every one of their specs because that's what TrackMan's taught them. We're in a scientific revolution for teaching, and all of them understand because bro, I went to the sim. My angle's this. That's the world we're in now.
But like I said, it's just going to be an adjustment of what the new norm is. I mean, it's trying to scale back you can't keep up with this unless something's done with the golf, especially from the standpoint of golf course. Who wants to watch? Like we could look 5 years down the road if this doesn't happen and be playing 8,500 yard golf courses.
I think we probably
Yeah,
will. I think that was probably part of the reason why they started with the anchor sites.
yeah.
Is they wanted to have their 5, 7 golf courses strategically around the country. Some maybe even yet to be built that were going to be able to be tipped out at 8,500. How much? Look, I'm going to. Andy's going to lean in. God, Bobby, Andy's going to lean in on me on this one. Is it the ball? Is it the shaft? Or is it the athleticism of the player?
Or the intent. The intent of the player to hit it really hard. I've heard people argue lately that the driver being so large allows people to go at it so much harder and not really have to worry about mishits nearly as much as they did with the smaller club. So I think all of those things are part of the equation. They all matter.
Tiger Woods was the freak when he came on tour because he hit 3-iron for 220 some yards. Or who's your buddy that the top amateur down there in Texas, where Tiger hit it out of the bunker. And
Mike Booker?
Mike Booker, thank you. Sorry, Mike, my apologies if you're listening. But Mike Booker, Tiger got upset because he could have made that play from 220 with a 3-iron out of the bunker. I mean, the point is the athleticism started with him. I keep going back to athleticism.
There were athletes.
Well,
There were athletes in this game forever.
Ed
Maybe
Porky
not
Oliver.
not as many, but they're definitely.
I mean, you can't scale back the athlete, right? You have
No,
to do equipment. There's no other way to look at this. Like, are you gonna measure body mass and weight and speed and things? You can't do that.
I'm just going off of the when Billy Hurley was on the show the one day, he goes, I think we've seen finally the manifestation of the Tiger effect with these young athletes coming to golf first instead of having done other things.
and I remember Gary Player telling me that in 1992 or three, the club I was at in Ocean City, Maryland, he designed. He came back in 3 or 4 times in a short period of time. And one of the times he had a big group of people there. I think they were media. And he said, in my lifetime, I know I'll hopefully see a Michael Jordan going to go, just what you said, AD. The supreme athlete not going to other sports, but gravitating to golf. And you're going to see them hit the ball so far. And I mean, you look at football, quarterbacks, there's a quarterbacks now that it used to be a defensive end size and weight from years ago. You look at the running back Henry, Baltimore, like, yeah, like these guys are massive as a running back, and quarterbacks are huge in every sport. It gets relative over time. They're all so big and strong and fast. Although the playing surfaces have not changed in golf, that playing surface has changed and has got longer. But to Andy's point, it's just
We mentioned Scotty earlier. Remember the video where he's hitting? He goes, "Yeah, I'm hitting it off the toe, and it's like 290."
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they don't know what it's like to put a smiley on a balata.
no.
Andy, I put some smileys on balatas.
We all have.
Yeah.
Except Christian.
That's right.
No, I've seen your swing, Andy. All right, anyway. USGA, they're back. They're back in the news. Ryder Cup ticket prices going to have to wait till next week because Bobby, 18th green, you're going first. What final thought?
Final thought this week, I saw the finally have decided on Kevin Kisner, or at least somebody being behind the mic for the majority of these tournaments. So I'll be interested to see how well he can develop and ease into the role. He said he's going to call it like it is. He says he's going to be sort of probably in the Johnny Miller. Well, Azinger was, he would say what's on his mind. So I'll be interested to see how that goes. And also, as we're talking about all this unbelievable money on tour, again, read an article this week about how poor the tipping is in many of the locker rooms. So as much as these guys are making a lot of money, the culture has gone away from, the tipping of the staff that helps these players every week. So that was interesting.
Cooch.
Huge school of tipping. Oh, B, what you got?
I'm just gonna piggyback on what we just got off of. I think it's still possible, and that's my final thought, to have a major championship where you're playing under 7,000 yards and seeing scoring kept under 10 under par. I still think that's what we should be exploring right there. That's my final thought.
without getting silly.
Yeah, right. Not talking green speeds. I'm just talking about bringing the step cuts of the rough and bringing the fairway in a little bit. I mean, and yes, you could have some speed to the greens, but not silly. Right, Andy. There's still a way that old school golf can still rule the day.
Cool.
So Marion probably would have been the closest one more recently that had that, and I believe the winning score was -1.
That was Justin Rose, correct?
I believe so.
Wasn't it +1?
You may be correct. I cannot recall.
We
And
may have to hire a show fact checker.
it's Bobby.
Bobby,
I
And
think
I could be wrong, but wasn't it under 7,000 yards on the final round? I think it was.
I don't know. Andy, we get fact checked.
He's checking.
Your final thought.
I'm on it.
I was reading a little bit on this report that was issued. I forget who issued it, but they did a comparison on strokes gained from 2023 to 2024. And as far as distance goes, the person who gained the most distance in the year of 2024 was Adam Schenk, and he only gained 11 yards. Okay. That was the biggest change of any player on the PGA Tour. The second place guy gained 5 yards.
Wow.
So, like, you think that they're making all these huge changes, but it's not. So the person who lost the most was Taylor Montgomery, and he lost 15 yards. And they were making the point that, when you start not hitting the center of the club face, those distance numbers start melting away pretty quickly and easily. Yeah. So it was pretty interesting to see that the changes were not as drastic as one might think. One final thought I have too is, Callaway and Topgolf, I think, finalized their split this week, or last week. And I'm genuinely concerned for Topgolf. I think, in my opinion, they've given too much of their attention and time to non-golfers, trying to get people interested in Topgolf into the game, which I think is great. But what they've done is they've basically taken a product that golfers were interested in the beginning and its launch that have zero interest in anymore. So all you're left with is, that other group of people that you're trying to get more interested in the game. And I think there's a definite concern for Topgolf. I've had a couple conversations with a guy from 5 Iron Golf, which is an indoor golf facility, really nice. Good. We may get him on the show to talk about this, but I think it's a real issue and a real hurdle that Topgolf needs to consider and deal with.
I got 2 points also. One is I was sharing with the boys beforehand. Few challenges this week. You only got one round in life. Make sure it counts. Get out, exercise, be good to yourself, because guess what? You'd like to play the back nine. I'll just leave it at that. But more importantly, well, I shouldn't say that, because more importantly, I'd be dead.
And drink water.
And drink water. Lots of water. Lots of water. That's important. But I didn't know if anybody caught this. You guys brushed right over in the live report. The Four Aces did acquire Thomas Peters today in an offseason trade. So, you know what? You guys got to stay up on these things. I cannot be constantly coming up with all the info on these cutting edge stories with live.
And the fact checking, Justin Rose wins at Marion US Open in 2013 with a +1.
And there you go. We'll catch you next week.